This video is to help you understand the law of cosines and how to use it to find missing sides or angles in a triangle that's not a right triangle. So the law of cosines is listed here, and there are two other variations of the law of cosine. And what I want to point out is the lowercase letters are the sides, and whatever side is on the left side of the equation, that is the angle that you're using, the capital angle. So if I have b squared, I've got cosine of b on the other side. If I have c squared on the left, then I have cosine of c on the right. And then the other thing I wanted to point out that helped me memorize it is that whatever side you have over here, the other two are what's on the right hand side. So it's like you use the one side here, and then the other two are what's on the right side of the equation. So if you're using b, you have AC on the other side. All right, so let's just hop right in to using the law of cosines. When you use the law of cosines, you're using it because you can't use the law of sines. Most people would say the law of sines is easier to use, and you're going to use it when you don't have an angle side pair. When I go to label my triangles, usually whatever angle is given, I label uppercase A. So typically with law of cosines, not typically, with law of cosines, you have one angle given. And so if you have one or none, if you have two angles given, you can usually use the law of sines, and it's easier. But in cosines, we usually have one angle or no angles. So if I have angle A, and then across from it is side A, and then the other two, doesn't matter what order, I'm just going to call that capital B, so this would be lowercase b, and if I call that capital C, then this would be lowercase c. So I'm just going to plug into the formula. So I have a squared is x squared, we don't know it. B is 10, c is 3, minus 2 times 10 times 3 times the cosine of 112. All right, so I can type all of that into the calculator, but before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and get that x by itself. It's being squared, and so I'm going to square root both sides, and that's actually what I'm going to type into the calculator. So the b and the c don't matter the order because they're both going to be on that right side. So I have the square root 10 squared, I think it was 3 squared, minus 2 times 10 times, 3 times the cosine of 112, and I'm just going to double check that I typed everything in right. 2, 10, and 3, 112, yep. And so then typing it all in at once helps you to not mess up and round too often during the problem. So I would have 11.47 if I was rounding to the nearest hundredth. Oops. All right, let's do another example. So in my next example, I'm going to have something similar here. They've already labeled the angles ABC for me, so I'm going to label the sides. That would be side C, this would be side A, this would be side B, because you always go across from the angles. So if in this one, if I'm using C, then I would have x squared equals, and then I use the other two sides. So I would have x squared equals 12 squared plus 17 squared minus 2 times 12 times 17 times the cosine of the angle that is given is angle C, and it's 80. So it's just that the side across from the angle that's given, it goes on this side, and the other two go into the equation on the right hand side. And then again, I'm going to square root both sides. And I'm just going to change what's in my calculator. The nice thing is if you type it in once, you can just edit. So it's 12. I honestly can't remember. Already, it was 80, I know. Yep, 17. Okay. So 12 and 17 and 80. 17 squared. 12. 17. And I didn't mean to do that. So I have, not the right angle, 80. struggling here. I've got 19.03. All right, the harder type of problem is like example 3. Example 3, you're finding an angle. And so when you are finding an angle in any type of problem, whether it's law of sines, law of cosines, or right triangle trig, you're going to use inverse trig. So I'm missing angle C, so I'm going to set it up with C on the other side. So I'm going to do C squared. I'm just going to write out the formula so you can see what I'm doing here. Plus equals A squared plus B squared minus 2ab cosine C. So again, whatever angle is on this side and its corresponding side goes over there. So I've got side C is 20. I have A is going to be across from A, it's 34. B is across from B, it's 15. And we don't know C. So this is the harder type of problem. I am going to choose to simplify it like this. I'm going to simplify this, then I'm going to combine these two, and then I'm going to simplify this part in my calculator. So I'm first going to do 20 squared, which is just 400. And then I'm going to type in 34 squared plus 15 squared. 34 squared plus 15 squared. That gives me 1,381. Minus, I'm going to do 2 times 34 times 15. And that gives me 1,020. And now I have the cosine of C. The next thing I'm going to do is to move this 1,381 over by subtracting it. So I have 400 minus 1,381, oopsies. And that gives me negative 981. And I'm just going to write down everything that's left. Now, negative 1,020 is multiplying cosine, so I'm going to divide by it on both sides. Oopsies. And I get this decimal. So I'm not going to write it as a decimal. I like to write it as a simplified fraction, which is 329 over 340. And this is equal to the cosine of C. I like to round at the very end. Now I'm going to take the inverse cosine of both sides, because inverse cosine is the opposite of cosine, so you'll just be left with C. And so I'm going to do inverse cosine 329 over 340. And that gives me 14.6, but that's small, so I'm just going to check to see if I'm in degrees. I am. So make sure your calculator's in degree mode, so 14.61. And that's in degrees. And that is how you find an angle using the law of cosines. And the other problems were when you're finding a side. Hope this helps.